Hello campers, this is the Suburban Camper. Everybody loves free, right? Check out all this public land. You own it, and in much of it you can camp for free. And in this video I will show you exactly where you can do it while camping in your SUV. Most of the free places to camp are located on public land managed by three entities, which are National Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and state forest agencies. There are different types of free campsites, so I created a classification table to distinguish them from one another and from campgrounds that charge a fee. I will provide examples of each type and convey which one is the best free camping option for each entity. Okay, let's get started by checking out the National Forest Service Interactive Recreation Map and look at what happens when you select camping. There are so many places to camp, but when you drill down, you see nearly all of them are campgrounds. I think we can agree, campgrounds are great. They feature developed campsites and at least one service, such as toilets, but often more than one, such as water, electricity, trash, and/or showers. There is always a time and place for a campground, and all three entities offer plenty of them, but those nice, flat, numbered sites with great services are not free. So, where are the free ones? Well, in most national forests, they are everywhere, primarily in the form of dispersed campsites, and to a much smaller degree, designated dispersed camping areas. I will start with designated dispersed camping areas, and here is one I am familiar with in the Malheur National Forest. They refer to it as undeveloped camping, and it is simply a trailhead where dispersed camping is allowed. This was listed on the National Forest Interactive Recreation Map, but keep in mind that is not always the case, so I recommend utilizing the dispersed camping section of the National Forest website to find these free places to camp. So, what is dispersed camping? Simply stated, it is camping somewhere that is not a developed campground, which does not tell you much, other than the spot where you camp is undeveloped, meaning there have not been any improvements made to it. The guidelines for dispersed camping in national forests state you should choose an existing site rather than create a new campsite, camp at least 100 feet away from streams, rivers, and lakes, and if you didn't bring firewood and intend to build a campfire, only collect already down wood. There are more, but that basically covers it. Keep in mind, it does not mean there are no services, as there may be a toilet or water on site or nearby. It may sound confusing, but I believe the examples I provide in this video will help you form a clear definition of dispersed camping. In addition to national forests, you can also find designated dispersed camping areas on land managed by the Bureau of Land Management, and I will refer to that entity as BLM going forward. Here is a great example of a designated dispersed camping area I featured in episode 2 of my Off the Beaten Path series. It is Priest Hole Recreation Site on the John Day River in Oregon. It is simply an area of land where dispersed camping is allowed anywhere within its boundary. Now, this map of the area guides you to spots to camp, and if you choose this one over here, you will have easy access to the toilet, so there are sometimes services available, but the spots they are guiding you to are just recommendations, and none of them are developed campsites. So, just pick a spot. You can camp right here on the gravel bar, or when I camped here, it was very hot and I did not bring my canopy, so I needed a shade tree. So this is the tree I picked, and look at all that shade. The Bureau of Land Management offers endless free camping opportunities, but they are not always easy to locate. The BLM website does a good job of identifying great areas to explore and camp, but once you drill down into that information, it relies heavily on their recreation web map, which is extensive, but it is very slow and difficult to navigate. When you click on an icon, you may get lucky and find a link, but often it does not contain much information beyond the location name. Here is a BLM area I just visited and profiled in episode 3 of my Off the Beaten Path series. I know there's a developed campground here, but I am not sure why there are 20 plus icons indicating that. Anyway, Most of the campsite icons with a white background are not accessible with a vehicle, and that is the case for many BLM areas. So if you are exploring and camping in your SUV in this area, are there any places to camp for free? The answer is yes, and that leads us to our next type of campsite, which is dispersed campsites. The BLM defines a dispersed campsite as a site within 100 feet of existing roads, vehicleways, or trails which have already been used or established. I scan the area and I see some campsite icons next to this road. When I click on them, they indicate they are primitive sites, non-reservable, and free, or in other words, it is a dispersed campsite. I was able to locate this area in Google Maps. I will follow this road, which is probably just a track, and there is a clearing along it and at the end of it, and those are the dispersed campsites indicated on the BLM recreation map where you can camp for free. Another example of a BLM dispersed campsite is this great spot in a beautiful canyon right on the river. Now, for some reason, the BLM recreation map does not have a camping icon for this place. It is a historic ranch site, but they do have a small campground. When I arrived here, I checked out the campground, but it was not right on the river, and my goal on this trip was to camp right on the river, so I chose this dispersed campsite, which is just an old boat launch right off the road. Now, to be fair, the BLM does have good information about this place, including a brochure, but I could not find it by using the search function at the BLM website, and instead found it by using Google. All that said, it is much easier to find dispersed campsites in our national forest. The key to finding them is the motor vehicle use map. Here is one for the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. These maps serve many functions, but all you need to know is dots equal free camping. Just look for roads with dots next to them, and that is where dispersed camping is allowed. Please keep in mind, not all the national forests have a motor vehicle use map. With all those dots, how do you decide where to camp? Well, this national forest features a wilderness area highlighted by Mount Adams, a 12,276 feet peak in the Cascade Range. I usually try and find a spot close to the wilderness area and a point of interest, such as a trailhead, river, or lake. My experience tells me the dots do identify the actual location of campsites, but that is all they tell you. They do not provide any information about the type, such as a track or clearing, size, or quality, such as levelness, so that is why I utilize Google Maps satellite view to assess them. Here is the trailhead I am interested in on Google Maps, so I will grab its coordinates and enter them into my geolocatable map. This area over here is close to the trailhead and the wilderness, and there are dots along the roads, so I will scan the roads for clearings. This looks like a good spot at the end of this road, but the road is not well defined, so I will look for some backup sites. Here is one over here. Now, let's go see if we can find these free campsites. This area is easily accessed by a paved forest road. I will use my geolocatable map application to navigate my way off the main road to the campsite. Hey, there's a campsite right there, but I think we can do better. There are signs for the nearby trailhead, and my map says I am getting close. One more turn here, and I will make my way up this track, which is a bit overgrown and rough, but no problem for my Suburban. Getting a bit narrower here. Watch out for that branch. Just a bit further, and here we are. What a spot! And it's free. This is a nice and flat clearing with plenty of room for my Suburban, and someone built a nice fire pit. The trailhead is less than a mile from here, and it provides great access to the wilderness. Oh, and what is this? It is a solar-powered seismic measuring station. Mount Adams is a potentially active volcano, so I am glad they are monitoring it. This is such a great spot, I am not even going to bother finding the backup site. Here is another example of a dispersed campsite in a national forest. It is a great remote campsite I featured in the first episode of my Off the Beaten Path series. I noticed it on Google Maps, but it was not listed on the website, and this national forest does not currently have a motor vehicle use map, so I called the local forest office to inquire. They did not recognize the name, but said it is probably an old dispersed campsite, and if you follow the dispersed camping rules, you can camp there or any other dispersed site in this national forest for free. So even though this national forest does not have a motor vehicle use map, dispersed camping is allowed even in places not listed on their website. Good to know. The next type of campsite is open dispersed camping area. This is very similar to dispersed camping areas, but you're allowed to travel more than 100 feet off-road on durable surfaces to camp. These are rare and are usually desert playas. One of the best examples is the Alvord Desert in Oregon. Camping on a desert playa is a truly unique experience. Just pick a spot, any spot. Okay, there may be some restrictions, such as avoiding wilderness study areas, but for the most part it is wide open. The last type of campsite is a designated primitive campsite. Now this will vary by state, but in Oregon, dispersed camping is allowed in state forests, and it basically works the same way as it does in a national forest, but there are not any maps of dispersed campsites. If you do not want to go through the efforts of finding a dispersed campsite, they offer designated campsites, some of which are mapped and free. These sites feature clear signage designating them as a campsite, and they are developed, so it is technically not dispersed camping, but the improvements are very limited, and most of them do not have any services other than a fire pit, so that is why I give them the primitive label. Keep in mind, some of these feature multiple campsites, a toilet, and charge a fee, and I classify those as campgrounds. Here are some examples of designated primitive campsites. As you enter the area, this sign makes it clear you should only camp in designated campsites over the course of the next 4 miles of this road, and it also makes it clear this is a fee area, which means the campsites are not free and cost $5 per night. However, there are other areas like this one where the designated campsites are free, and keep in mind, once you go beyond the 4-mile marker, you can also do dispersed camping for free. Here's a nice campsite with a pull-through and plenty of room for tents. Here's another one right off the road. This is another spot right off the road, but there's a sign saying no camping, although I have seen people camping here. And here are the designated primitive campsites I utilize when I'm fishing the nearby river, but that truck just beat me to my spot. Okay, that covers off on all the types of campsites. Here is the best free campsite option for each entity. I will start with what I believe is the best option of all, and that is dispersed camping in national forests. Designated dispersed camping areas are great, but they are few and far between in national forests, and the motor vehicle maps make it very easy to find free dispersed campsites. This, plus the fact there are national forests across the country, which makes it possible to traverse the country and camp for free the entire way, are the reasons I believe dispersed camping in national forests are the best option for free camping. When considering places to find free campsites, you must acknowledge the fact that 1 in every 10 acres in the United States is managed by the Bureau of Land Management. But you also need to consider much of that land is leased to private parties, which makes it difficult to determine whether you are on private or public land. This, plus the fact the BLM resources are not very user-friendly, means finding free campsites requires extra effort. The best option on BLM land is dispersed campsites because there are endless opportunities, and just like national forests, there are not that many designated dispersed camping areas. I believe it is worth the extra effort required, and as I look back on my favorite campsites, many of them are dispersed campsites on BLM land, and all of them were free. In my opinion, the designated primitive campsites are the best option for state forests, as they make it easy to have a primitive camping experience, and many of them are free. Now, all that is left to do is to get out there and explore and find some great free campsites. And when you do, please follow the 7 principles of leave no trace. And as always, if you learned something from this video, please subscribe. Thank you very much.